Hi everyone, this is a quick recap, well not quick, but this is a recap of what I've been doing the past few days. I know I've kind of vanished for a little while, and if you've been following my Twitter, you know generally what I've been doing, but I thought I would explain it now that I'm back and able to kind of process what fully is going on. And it all starts with the SOPA Act. Actually, there's kind of an alphabet soup of legislation that's passing through the House and Senate that has to deal with Stop Online Piracy, the Protect IP Act, and also there's like an alternative bill called Open. And a lot of the Channel Awesome producers went down there and they invited me to go along with them. So right off the bat, thanks to Channel Awesome for giving me the chance to go down there and join up with you guys and make our voices heard in Washington to help protect the business that we love so much. So if you don't know, and I am by no means a legal scholar. I did not actually even read the bill in its entirety. I read summaries of the bill by much smarter people than, made by much smarter people than myself. But generally what it does, Stop Online Piracy Act was very scary and probably the most notorious because the language in it is so broad and so vague and so difficult to understand that if passed could have sweeping consequences that would fundamentally change the internet as you know it. At its most extreme, people have been comparing it to censorship on the level of what Iran and China does to its internet. And so basically what happens is the language in this bill is such that if somebody feels that there's infringing copyrighted content on a website, that they can essentially go to the Department of Justice and get what amounts to a federal injunction against a website, which would result in that website being delisted from the internet. So, for instance, my website, if Spoony Experiment got delisted, if you were to type in spoonyexperiment.com, nothing would come up because it's no longer listed. If you knew the IP address, you might be able to type it in and get the same thing, but at its fundamental level, you no longer have your name server, so you are absolutely crippled from a business standpoint because, well, for obvious reasons. I mean, if your site's not easily found, it's not searchable on Google, and it goes after advertisers. It really is this huge problem that essentially there was so many concerns that we had with it because it is such a sweeping, vague bill, and it confronts so many issues that we really felt like we had to go at least voice our concerns to as many legislators as we could. Those concerns include, delisting, the lack of any kind of due process when it comes to, somebody filing a complaint against us and getting our site delisted without even our knowledge or ability to defend ourselves, unlike DMCA. There's also, it confronts many issues like international piracy. Really, I think what most of us came in to this bill thinking was that this bill was ostensibly written to combat international copyright infringement. Like, there's several websites that essentially stream movies and television overseas and add their own advertising content, and that's, of course, completely illegal. It's making money off, essentially, just it's shamelessly making money off copyrighted content, which is very, very different from, most other sites like, even like just say YouTube, that a lot of other people who may use copyrighted content but use it in a fair use way, use it in legitimate ways, or even ways like in stuff that's even arguably infringing. It really does come down to the person filing the complaint to determine what is infringing, and you never know. You have no chance to stick up for yourself, and people would even have problems with DMCA in that regard. I had my own problems with YouTube. I remember getting at least 2 strikes on my YouTube account because of my theme song, which I actually have literal written permission from the Irresponsibles to use, but the appeals process, even for YouTube, is, let's say, flawed at best. So, of course, this is a system that is in desperate need of overhauling, and really we're talking about an area of law that really needs intense and comprehensive discussion, because this we're talking about a region of law that has, until the last 10 years, or the last 10, 15 years, has never even been imagined before, because we're dealing with something that has by its nature no borders, or and people are trying to impose borders on it, and we're still trying to wonder how feasible that is. There's no way the founding fathers, when they wrote the Constitution, even envisioned the concept of the internet. So it's hard to even argue constitutionality or rights when it comes to internet law. So I sympathize with lawmakers, because this is a very difficult situation to wrap your head around, and it's very difficult to write language that is fair and ensures due process for copyright holders and people in entertainment and business who want to use this fairly, or even generate their own content. So at a core level, it undermines ability to make original content. So the nature of delisting sites is, of course, of paramount concern to us, because if that guy with the glasses gets cited for this under the SOPA Act and we get delisted, there's virtually no way for us to recover from that. So these are our concerns, and so I think more than anything, we weren't going down there banging a drum to necessarily stop SOPA, although that act as written is probably the most alarming, but really just to encourage a reopening of the discussion, to make the language clearer, and to give content holders and content creators more of an equal chance to fight for their own survival, fight for their own content, fight for their own rights. So that was really what our goal was, to at least inform these legislators that there's jobs at stake, there's content creators' rights who are we feel jeopardized by this particular act. And so we didn't go down there looking to pick a fight. So I hope nobody's going down there thinking we came down there to raise some hell. We didn't. We came down there to inform. And so we went to Washington, D.C., and the first question is, do you feel like you got anything done? And really that question is very, very difficult to answer, and mainly because, I'll put it this way, I'm extraordinarily naive when it comes to politics. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this. And I didn't do much of the talking. Of course, as I said, there was much smarter legal minds, or at least political minds, in the room, and of course, the people who run Channel Awesome are much more schooled in this issue than I am. But I did a fair amount of talking, and we met with, I'd say, we didn't meet with legislators themselves. We met with staffers, and so, if you don't understand what that means, that's not a bad thing necessarily, because the staffers are really the people who, let's put it this way, your average senator and congressman deals with a staggering amount of legislation, every day, and these bills are huge. You can't possibly expect one person to read and understand and comprehend every single piece of legislation that crosses their desk. So they delegate. That's what they have staffers for. And so these staffers read, and they essentially generate summaries or cliffs notes of these bills, get a feel for their constituents' opinion on the matter. They're the ones who kind of field phone calls and read emails. So they get a feel for their jurisdiction's general opinion of this, and then they kind of filter their opinions and a summary of the bill to the legislator. And then it's up to that legislator to form an opinion. So in a way, talking to the staffers was not a bad thing. So when I say we didn't really talk to legislators, that's not to say we got pawned off on underlings. That's not it at all. So, do we feel like we got? Yes, I feel like I got some things done, but it's really hard for me to get a read on the how they saw us leaving, or whether or not we really changed any opinions. I know for certain we did walk out informing at least one staffer a great deal about at least what these bills in principle do, and this person seemed very surprised, in fact, that this does affect smaller businesses and entertainers and things like that. And jobs are at stake. And so, just informing this person that domestically this has an impact, because almost all of them told us that this is really, really targeted towards international foreign piracy, foreign copyright infringement. They would all say that, and so that's where I start to wonder whether or not we really had an impact in changing anyone's opinion or influencing them, because they were all, a lot of them, I remember, I don't know if I should say any names, so I won't. We saw one particular staffer for a senator that essentially told us that, he says, well, you don't need to be worried because this bill is targeted towards international piracy, so you don't need to worry. And so we would argue, we'd point at the bill and point at little passages, highlighting our concern. And he goes, "Yeah, I can see that, but don't worry, because we wouldn't do that to you." That's kind of the general argument. Is trust us. We wouldn't. This bill is intended to go after international piracy, and although you could make an argument that it applies to you, we wouldn't do that. So I guess that's the problem. Is that our concerns are leveled on the argument that the language is too vague, and if it can be abused, we have concerns that it will be abused. And so maybe a staffer's word that, don't worry, even though this bill may threaten your freedoms, we wouldn't do that. So I know several of the meetings were a little disheartening, because the staffers essentially smiled and said, "I can see where you're concerned, but you don't have to worry. Big Brother would never do that to you." And that's where our argument for due process comes in, because we have a slight problem with the person who just one person determining what is infringing that does not happen to be a judge. And so, but there were several encouraging meetings, in the sense that at least encouraging to me, because they would argue that they didn't argue, but they told us that a lot of these bills are still going through a restructuring, like managers' amendments or managers, I forget what it's called, but they're going through committees that clean up the ambiguities in the language, which is good. At least it was heartening to see, at least, that several of these staffers admitted that the language in many cases is vague and has the potential for abuse, and that the bill is currently in committee to get the language cleaned up, so that there is much less potential for abuse in this. I remember Senator Franken was actually a very disheartening meeting for a lot of them. They came out of there whipped, but at the same time, at least, I'll show you. This is what I mean. They came in there, they made their point, and the staffer had the bill in front of her and was staggeringly well informed about this bill, so much so that when we said, "Oh well, this applies foreign and this applies to piracy both foreign and domestic," she whipped open the paper and she pointed right at a bill and she goes, "Well, according to this passage, such and such and such." And so basically at this point we both kind of had our own passages that made our points for us, and then we just kind of agreed to disagree, which again ties back to where we felt the language in the bill was a little too vague. But at least we had this. We came out of there knowing that, if nothing else, Senator Franken, was extremely well informed about the bill, and had generated his own informed opinion about it. So, it's encouraging to know that, at least. So he may be on the wrong side of the issue, but at least he's on the wrong side of it for the right reasons. I guess that's it. So yeah, it's hard for me to tell, because a lot of those staffers, some of us felt like they were just trying to reassure us, and kind of push us out the door, making us feel like we'd done something, and making us feel a little better about the bill, without really promising to do anything about it. And so that's where my own naivete comes in, and that's where there's it's a little hard to tell whether or not we really changed anyone's mind. But at the same time, I think we did surprise a few people by informing them that there are legitimate businesses, in New York and Chicago, that there's a lot of money and jobs that are tied up in this, I don't want to say industry, but in this business, and a lot of freedoms would be impacted potentially. And I think we did do something there. Now, how successful it is, I can't say. And I guess we won't see until later. Our feelings coming out of this were cautious. SOPA, it's a hard thing with SOPA because this is the kind of thing where, we don't think SOPA is going to go through. On the other hand, we really do encourage you to write your local congressman and senator, voicing your concerns about online freedoms, stop online piracy, protect IP. Go online and form your own opinion. Write the legislator urging them to vote against this for now, because really it could and probably will have a very dramatic impact, and at worst will it'll change the way your favorite shows will essentially cease to exist in their current format. And so, coming out of there, we felt like none of the legislators were entirely happy with Stop Online Piracy Act. That it will probably be defeated in its current form. Although you should still write in and make it known. You should still make your opinion known. But we kind of walked out of there with a feeling of inevitability, because there was a lot of support for the alternative bills, which narrow the focus of this legislation. They are much more narrow. They're much more specifically targeted, but at their core level, still result in some pretty sweeping changes, and still result at the end of the day with the ultimate consequence of delisting of websites. Where DMCA is very finely targeted to the specific, potentially allegedly infringing content, the new acts result ultimately in delisting and potential felony charges. And so while due process is added to these, grace periods, time, warnings and stuff like that, we feel there are some still very severe changes in these alternative bills, and that these alternative bills will probably eventually get through. So it's kind of funny where there's kind of a grim sense about us, to where we feel like we have done something to prevent SOPA, but it's kind of a vanishing frontier that we're working on. You know what I mean? To where we're all, it's pretty sad, where we all walked out of there talking about what our plans were, what our alternative plans were when this finally comes through. And that's scary. You know what I mean? Because I love doing this, and I know I haven't done it in a while, but there's reasons for that. But the sense that what I'm doing here, what I'm doing right now, could disappear. What Joe's doing now could disappear. The concept of review shows and comedy reviews of movies. What Kyle is doing. What Lindsay's doing. The fact that all of a sudden we're walking on very thin ice legally, to where our site could disappear if we piss off the wrong person, and they get they file a claim against us, and it's gone. So to where we're all finding alternatives, and that's scary. So you definitely need to. I would urge you guys to stay informed about this legislation that's coming down, and make your voices known to legislators, because ultimately that's all we can do. I've done everything I can to try to inform people about what's going on. I may not have done a very good job, but I tried. So we told them that there's businesses and there's content creators out there that we're being jeopardized by this. And so if you like what you see online, if you go to that guy with the glasses, you go to my website, you need to make your voice known. I mean, this is really the age of the protester. I think the last year we've seen the power of people banding together and making our voices known, because that's the only way these legislators are going to know that you have a problem with this, with your freedoms being threatened, essentially, and you like the internet the way it is. And if you don't like the internet the way it is, I mean, just urge for refinement of the DMCA. Just urge for this discussion to continue, because we're not taking the sides of pirates. We're not saying let us continue to infringe content. We're saying we are using content in a way that is fair and that is entertaining. We are not attempting to pirate anybody. We're victims of pirates ourselves. Again, without naming names, pretty much everyone I've known that I've met from that guy with the glasses who's ever made a movie has been severely impacted by piracy, torrents and stuff like that. So I can certainly sympathize with somebody wholesale just stealing, and that's wrong, but trust me, it's wrong. I don't do that myself, and so I feel what I do is different, but yeah, I guess I'm going to get off my soapbox on this issue, and in brief, that's what we did. That's what we were kind of fighting for. So, as for the other notes, it's story time. So I'll tell you what we noticed, what happened while we were there. Not a lot of funny stories going on out there, but there was some observations. You probably saw before this me in a suit, which I think I have not worn a suit in at least 11 years. I can't. I owned a suit, and I don't know when I ever wore it. But yeah, so don't get used to that, because I'm not a suit-wearing guy. You probably noticed I look really uncomfortable in that suit. But I'd been to Washington, D.C. one time before, and that was for a convention. And so I didn't really get to see the sights. We drove by the Pentagon one time. Really, I wish I had more time to go there, because it really is a fascinating place. Very cool. I got to see the major buildings up close. Like, I got to walk through several of the Senate office buildings, and then I walked through several of the House office buildings. I got to see the Capitol building. I was right on the steps of the Capitol building. Walked by the Supreme Court, which was awesome. It's the kind of place I wish I kind of want to spend a week and just go back down there. I could spend a week just going to the Smithsonian and just nerding out there like crazy. It would be really, really cool to do that. But yeah, it was pretty much the first time for a lot of us, except for Pa and Kyle, who live in the area. And even Kyle had admitted he'd never really been to Capitol Hill at all. So as for the place itself, it was kind of funny where I noticed this about 2 hours into our meetings. We'd been through several meetings, and I spoke to a few people about this, but and I know how this is going to make me sound, and there's no good way for me to approach it, so I'll just do it. Post your hate mail. Go ahead. I know this is sexist, and I know this is terrible, but the whole time I was there, 3 days, 2 days and 2 nights, whatever. The whole time I was there on Capitol Hill, in the Senate building, and the House building, walking down the street, I did not see an unattractive woman. I didn't even see, an unattractive to average-looking woman in Washington, D.C. Not one. They were all of them. Every single one of them was a head-turner. And I know how that sounds. I know it makes me sound terrible. But every single one, if on a scale of 1 to 10, no one under an 8. If I was on my very sexist Grading scale 1 to 10, not 1 under an 8. It was remarkable. It was actually kind of surreal at some point. It was like in that scene in Last Action Hero where the kid goes, "Where are all the normal-looking women?" You know, it really was. It was like there were older women there. You know, like they weren't all like 25-year-old models, but all of them looked good. They were. I mean, I know people are dressing their best on Capitol Hill. It's a business thing. No, like it was like Model City. Like I really wonder. Like I was like living in a calendar. You know, like it was like, oh my god. And I don't know if it's like legislators keeping their own personal harems, but man, these women were gorgeous. I was actually looking for like, I was like, where's an average looking woman? Someone help me out here. And like, not one. Craziness. Maybe if I'd seen Ginsburg or something like that, I'd been like, normally, like finally a normal looking woman. I don't know. Oh, jeez. So, yeah, if you're looking for a, I guess they're only attracted to men with political power, but the ratio there is phenomenal. If they had a beach, well, I guess it's really cold there. You know what I mean? You know. Oh man. So we had some time between meetings, and Joe wanted to shoot something. Joe wanted to shoot a lot. He was asking me before I left, like, "Are you going to bring any costumes? Are you going to bring anything? Like, we could shoot something for later." And I'm like, I think we're going to be really busy with meetings the whole time. I don't know that we're going to have a lot of time to shoot, and we didn't. We were in meetings pretty much the whole day, but we had a lunch hour, and Joe was like, "I want to shoot something for I want to shoot my own little commercial for Stop Island Piracy. I want to do something with Corporate Commander." So I go, okay. And so we're walking past the Capitol building, like, the fucking Capitol building, and he's like, Spoony, hold my camera. We're gonna shoot this thing. And I'm like, oh my god. So he starts putting on his cape, and I'm like, are you serious, dude? Are you serious, bro? And he's like, yeah, let's do this. I'm like, we should ask. So Joe goes up in his cape, and he talks to one of the Capitol Police. And by the way, even the female cops, attractive. It was like models in police uniforms. Fucking amazing. Okay. So he goes up to talk to the cop, and the cop is like, yeah, you can film as long as you don't set up a tripod. So you can film handheld, but you can't set up anything semi-permanent because snipers. So we're like, okay. So he goes up there and he gets in his Corporate Commander outfit and he launches into his spiel. "Hello, this is Corporate Commander." And he starts doing this thing where he starts screaming. And he goes, "Fucking thing sucks!" And he's like cursing and yelling about Stop Online Piracy. He's got big dollar signs on his shoulders, and I'm sitting there taping this thing, and we were worried. Like, Rob and I were worried sick. Like, I was feeling sick. I was so worried about this because this is just and I felt bad. Actually, Joe was like, he felt like we were picking on him, and we were. Because we were so worried. We're like, dude, we shouldn't be doing this. I know the cop said it was okay, but we shouldn't be doing this. And he goes, "Oh, come on, let's just do it." So, he was right. How often do you get a chance to film on the Capitol steps? So, Joe, I'm not picking on Joe. I was worried. And so, Joe's doing his spiel. He's dressed like fucking Cobra Commander. And Rob is, he like taps me on the shoulder. He's whispering in my ears. He goes, he's like, "Dude, tell Joe to keep it down. We're scaring the straights." And he's still doing it. He's like, okay, so finishes the first time. I'm getting up. He's like, I'm going to do it again. So he's going to do a take 2. So he does his take 2, and Rob comes over to me and he taps me on the shoulder. And he goes, "Dude, there's snipers on the rooftop." And I look, and there's snipers on the rooftops. And I'm like, what the fuck is this guy seeing? This guy, there's a guy with binoculars, and there's like a fucker with a high-powered rifle. And I just know this guy's got Joe fucking targeted right here. He's got fucking Corporate Commander targeted on the Capitol steps. He's just waiting for something to drop, he's waiting for Corporate Commander to whip out a gun. And that'd be great on Joe's tombstone. shot dead on the steps of the Capitol building dressed like corporate commander. Jesus Christ. So, that's really the only funny story. The flight home was fun. First off, oh my god. This is not a good video for making me look like the most caring, compassionate, and sensitive guy ever. And I guess there's nothing I can do about that. But I'm sitting, okay, I have to set this up. I'm taking one of those off-brand flights home. The kind that doesn't really have first class. It's like just a big plane, and you can sit anywhere you want. So I'm sitting in the front row. I'm sitting very front, which is not like first class. It's just, it's just the front row. So it's important you know that, because I'll tell you in a minute. Sitting across the aisle from me, there's this old lady, sweet old lady, and she's wearing these sandals. And for some reason, I'm just looking around. I look down, and I see her feet. And these are like the most horrific fucking feet I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen, and don't show me pictures of worse feet. Don't do that. 'Cause, these feet were like, it was like old, shitty leather. It was like Yoda's feet, but worse than Yoda's feet. Because, like, I don't even know how this is physically possible. I've heard of hammer toes before, like, but she had feet that, like, okay, this is her, imagine this is a foot, okay, and you got the big toe right here. Her second toe next to the big toe had, like, taloned up and had, like, grown over her big toe and had, like, dropped down like a claw. And the other toes had, like, taloned. So it was like this, the nails were like all yellow and split, and there was like, it was like I got like hair on my knuckles. It was like there was this thick gray tufts of like curly hair that had like, it was like hobbit feet. And like they were like, it was like it was like a jerked chicken foot. Like, So, like, I'm looking over, I'm like, So I just can't, I can't look. I'm like looking straight at it. I was like, it's fucking horrible. Sorry about that, I ran out of memory card. Anyway, this woman has nothing to do with anything. I'm just, anyway. So, keep in mind that I'm in the front of the plane, so my experience, my perception of what's going on in this plane is not everything it could have been, although I did have a unique perspective on this thing. Okay, so the story begins with they basically push an unaccompanied minor onto this plane, which is a kid. So this kid looks like he's from fucking Jupiter. He's got these big round eyes. He's like 7, and he's looking around. He's like, and he kind of has to be led to his seat. I don't know what's with this kid, but this kid, he's not quite all there. So about an hour into the flight, this is a 4-hour flight. I'm going from Milwaukee to Phoenix. As we're going, the flight attendants, they start to get together, and apparently there's some kind of commotion in the back of the plane. I don't know what it is. I'm busy writing. I'm actually writing a script on my tablet. So I missed out on a bunch of stuff, but I'm hearing words like mental. I'm hearing words like, he just won't sit down, he doesn't listen to us, why doesn't he just sit down? And so then I start I hear the word mental, and I'm kind of tuning in, but I can only hear half of it because of the engine noise and they're whispering. So apparently there's somebody in the back of the plane who keeps getting up out of his seat and kind of moving around, and they keep telling him to sit down, and he won't. And so they start to ask him what's wrong, and I hear the words, Well, he says this is his first time flying and he's afraid. So I offered to hold his hand, and he doesn't want to do that. But he won't sit down. And so I'm thinking it's the kid. Because they said I offered to hold his hand because he's scared. And so I'm like thinking, oh, it's a kid. He's scared. He's never flown. So they're going to, like, who else would offer to hold somebody's hand but, like, a lady trying to hold a kid's hand? What are you doing? Dog. So I'm thinking, you gotta remember, for like 3/4 of this conversation, I'm actually thinking it's a kid. It's not. But that's what I think. So, they keep kind of having these huddles in the front of the plane because they're apparently getting really legitimately freaked out. I probably should have been a little more freaked out than I was because, again, I thought it was a kid. So they this goes on, and you got to remember this is over the span of like 3 hours. About an hour later, they're still kind of getting together over this, and this is where I start to hear words like crazy, effing crazy, and things like that. And so I start to wonder, like, this is really a kid. And so what happens is they start getting on their little flight attendant phone, and they start talking to someone in the cockpit. And then they bring out, like, the drink tray, and they barricade the front of the plane. They barricade the cockpit away from the hallway. And there's one of the ladies is standing behind this, like, playing defense. And I'm like, what the fuck? And so the captain comes out. The fucking captain comes out of the cockpit and starts asking them what the hell's wrong. And they start pointing, and they go, like, back there, there's this guy. Back there. And so I can't hear what's going on. And so they start, the captain says, well, I don't need 3 opinions. I need the nurse's opinion. And so then he goes back to the cockpit, and he closes the door. And I'm like, so they start talking, and apparently whoever is causing the scene is saying that he's about to have a seizure, because I can see them gesturing, and they're saying words like seizure. So he's like, the guy's like, he says he's about to have a seizure because he's raising his hands and he's trembling his hands like he's gonna have a seizure. And so they call on the plane for anyone with medical experience. And so there's a nurse on the plane. So the nurse goes back there, and again, I still can't see what's going on because the flight attendants are all kind of forming a bubble around whatever's happening. And so the nurse, apparently, the nurse is back there doing the nurse's thing, and the flight attendants are up there, and now they're debating on whether or not this guy is legitimately crazy or he really is about to have a seizure. I don't know if you can tell you're about to have a seizure before you have a seizure, but whatever. So, I think 2 of them believe this guy is just being some kind of psychopath. And only the 3rd thinks this might be legitimate. But they're both wondering, all 3 of them are wondering, if it's a legitimate medical emergency, they are obligated to divert the flight to a nearby city and get medical attention. But they don't know what to do if the guy is just crazy. You know what I mean? Like, if he's not if he's violent, then they divert the flight. But this guy is just being panicky and weird and saying, I'm having a seizure, I'm having a seizure. And so they don't know if they need to divert the plane, and so they're kind of having this little war council up in front of the plane. Of course, the fucking cockpit's barricaded, and everyone's starting to freak out a little bit, you know. So, thankfully, I don't know. I don't know now. They chose not to divert the flight. We made it, of course. But had this guy really turned out to be, like, violently insane, I don't know. Maybe they should have. But, okay, 3rd hour of the flight. The guy finally admits, this is a guy, by the way. It's not the kid. This is where I start to realize it's not a kid. They say that the guy finally admits that he has taken drugs before the flight. Now, again, I didn't hear what kind of drugs, whether it be prescription or somewhat illegal. I'm guessing, I don't even think this guy knows what he took. Because clearly he's not all that coherent at the moment. But he took something for the first time just before the flight. And now he's not doing well. So, basically they've got the nurse sitting by this guy. And at the first sign this guy is about to go nuclear, they're going to divert the flight. but we make it. I think after 3 hours, this guy starts to come down a little bit to where he actually started like being able to admit that he was on drugs. So I think actually at that point he was okay. But yeah, we land and we have to wait there because because if you report any kind of medical emergency, which they had to do, you have to get the paramedics on board. It's just like policy. Paramedics have to come on board and pull the guy off if you made some kind of medical fuss. So fucking paramedics come on and they pull this guy off, and this guy looks like the biggest Milwaukee douchebag. I didn't even know Milwaukee's had douchebags of this caliber, but this guy looks like a Milwaukee douchebag. This guy, he's wearing a Milwaukee Brewers hoodie. I think it's a red one. I'm pretty sure it was red. And I'm going to get a message from a guy who wears his hat like this. He wears his hat like a fucking asshole. I wonder if I have a hat. I got a hat. This is a bad hat to use as an example because it looks like a normal ball cap. It's one of those fucking skater hats that has like the absurdly big brim that's complete. Like my bill is like you know, you wear a hat, it looks like a normal hat. You kind of got this bill bent here because most people do that. This is like a perfectly flat bill that is like twice as big as a normal hat. Like it shoots out like this. And of course, this fucking candy ass has his hat on like at that 70% angle, and it's like that, and it's a fucking Brewers hat like this, and he looks like he stepped right out of the fucking 90s or something like that. So he's got this fucking hoodie on, and he's got his fucking Brewers skater fucking douchebag hat on, and he's coming off the plane, and of course he's got this shitting I eat poop grin on his face. I'm sorry, I made kind of an ass out of myself, didn't I? And we're like, you fucking shithead. You almost got us diverted to fucking Denver. You know, I did not, after my fucking travails at Washington, D.C., I did not want to, there's nothing wrong with Denver. I didn't want to spend the night there, fucking shithead. Some asshole drops acid back in the airport. I gotta sleep in fucking Denver that night. God damn. So, I forgot this guy. That's pretty much the end of the story there. There's no moral. Don't take drugs. Fuck's sake. Okay. Before this, I'm in the Milwaukee airport. No, it was Washington, D.C. I'm in the Washington, D.C. airport. So, I'm at Ronald Reagan International. So, I'm sitting there, and there's this guy. He sits down next to me. And it's this really weird circumstance because we're talking like a terminal here, and there's like 50, 60 seats in the terminal, and only like 10 of them are occupied. He sits next to me. He whips out a Playboy. And I'm sitting there doing my Twitter bullshit because I got nothing else to do, and I'm checking it on Foursquare saying I'm at places like Ass, because there was a place called Ass on my Foursquare. This motherfucker sits next to me and he whips out a Playboy. And I'm like, and he's not like beating it in the terminal or anything, but this guy's like 70, 75 years old. He's an old dude. And he's looking at the Lindsay Lohan Playboy. And he's not really reading it, but he's going page by page and like looking at the pictures, like he's giving every picture, like every single one. He's looking at it, you know. And I'm like, okay, you know, let's forget about porn, okay? Like, fuck it, everyone likes porn, but you don't go to the fucking airport and look at porn. This guy's reading porn like a boss, man. Like, and I'm not even. He's not like, hey, look at that. Like, yeah, no, he's not like. I would have expected kind of dirty old man behavior. He just sits next to me, and he's just enjoying porn, and I move. Like, I don't want to. I don't know what. I get out of there. Like, fuck that. So, like, I'm sitting over there, and I'm tweeting about how this guy's looking at porn. But yeah, by the way, Lindsay Lohan. You know, a few years ago, this might have intrigued me. Lindsay Lohan, dude. Now, dude. Crack hoe. Not even interested. Like, no. Dude, she nasty. She really is about 5 years late trying to cash in on the curiosity of, like, let's see this barely legal chick naked. Now it's not even... Like, even in Machete, I didn't think it was a good idea. And she didn't even really show her goods in Machete. And if you got still frames, I don't even care. Two things about the Lindsay Lohan spread. And it's not like okay. Two things about this. One, I don't know if they even airbrush it anymore, but photoshopped to shit. There's almost like not even a legitimate square inch of flesh on any of those pictures. Second thing, I don't know who told Lindsay Lohan she looks like Marilyn Monroe, but she don't. Like, not even close. Marilyn Monroe and Lindsay Lohan have completely different body types, not to mention different hair colors and hairstyles and eyes and boobs and hips and everything. You look nothing like Marilyn Monroe. I don't know where you got this plan. And plus, you know, posing in Playboy and replicating the Marilyn Monroe shoot is not all that original of an idea. Just throwing that out there. God. Okay, so this guy's looking at porn. And he's thumbing through it. And then our plane boards, and this guy's been there as long as I have, then our plane starts to board, he don't get on the plane. I don't know if he was like, maybe he had some obscenely long layover or something, and he got really, really bored. Like, I could see, I'm trying to think of like when would I ever go to the airport and look at a Playboy? And I'm like, well, maybe if I was like, had like a 24-hour layover and I had to sleep there all night, and maybe I got bored and I was like, yeah, I should beat it. I don't know, I can't even, no, I'm not, no. Because, like, looking at porn, there's certain natural consequences that come out of looking at porn. And you generally want some privacy. Generally, you're not getting at the airport. So, I guess in a way I'm glad he didn't board my plane, because then you got this 75-year-old dude who I just know would have had the ticket sitting next to me. You've got this 75-year-old guy who just looked at a whole Playboy spread, and he's got this whole huge withered boner, and he doesn't know what to do with it, and he's sitting next to me, and then he's got to go to the bathroom, and then he, like, of course he has to scooch across from me to get to the bathroom, and of course he gives me the crotch, so he's like, and he's rubbing his fucking withered boner in my face. Oh! And then I can't look to my right because there's fucking boner guy, and I can't look to my left because there's fucking claw feet. God damn. Like, look, I don't care. Like, everyone's got problems with the feet. Like, no, I mean, everyone's got problems. Everyone's got something they're not proud of, okay? Like, we all got stuff. But, like, if you got feet like that, wear Crocs, wear shoes, because nobody wants to see that. If I had anything that was, like, if I had, like, one of those conjoined dead infantile twins on my side, I wouldn't, like, show you that. Like, you don't want to see that, because you're like, oh. Dude, if I had, like, a really weird hand, I wouldn't show you my weird hand. I'd just, like, I'm not saying you need to, like, be ashamed of your imperfections, but, like, if you had feet like that, you should be ashamed of feet like, yeah, because, wow. Wow, you gotta keep those clean. Keep those clean. Because, yeah, Whoa! Ha! Yeah. General hygiene, okay? Like, okay, fuck it. Like, if you got a weird foot, I don't... Just straighten the toes out. Like, don't do the thing with their... Yeah. Like, wear socks. Fuck's sake. It's like, is it like when you get old, you cease to give a shit? You're like, fuck it, they're gonna see my weird feet now. I'm about to die. I got no reason to impress nobody. Fuck it, they can deal with my feet. Shit. That's all I got. Right representatives, people. Stop online piracy, but the SOPA Act's not the way to do it. So, until next time, have fun, guys.